good to have you with me today. Welcome. Just a reminder for those of you who are watching this as a replay when we get that posted, to like the video, drop a comment, share it with a friend, and subscribe to my channel. It helps to make these little recordings visible to a whole lot more people who are interested in the topic of iridology. If you've been hanging out with me for any length of time, you already know that I've got two missions in life as an iridologist. The first is to mentor practitioners who are struggling in their businesses because they spend their own time unpaid and after hours creating client protocols. And the second is to teach the truth about iridology and its proper application in a wellness practice. So with that in mind, we are going to ask the question today and discuss the question, is iridology a diagnostic tool or is it an assessment tool? And beyond that, how do we use it in a clinical practice? We already know that diagnosis means naming a disease. And so what we need to be aware of here is that in order to diagnose legally in North America and in many other places around the face of our beautiful globe, you have to have specific credentials, a medical doctor, in some places naturopaths, in some places nurse practitioners. And that's where we go if we want to name a disease, right? They run tests and from there, with the results of the tests, they name a disease and they base the treatment protocol on the name of the disease that they've assigned. It's not a bad thing, except that research has shown, studies have shown that up to 20% of the diagnoses that are made are incorrect. So maybe treating based on the name of the disease is not the best option. So maybe we don't want to do that. We've all heard of cases where once a disease label is attached to a person, it's really hard to remove it. And that means, of course, that it's really hard to change the course of the treatment as well. So we also want to then be looking at the question then, if we're not going to diagnose, what are we going to do? How are we going to use iridology to be of benefit in our practices, right? So I'm just curious, as we're starting out here, I'd love to know in the chat box if you have any background in iridology already. I see one of my students here has joined us. That's so great to see her here. But if you've got background, if you've done training, if you've done a course, I would love to see that. And I'd really like to know if your training is Jensenian or constitutional. That's going to help me to really laser in and make sure that our time together is good. If you have no training, just put no training in the comments box. And again, that's not to make anybody uncomfortable. It is simply so that I can make sure that the information I'm giving you is the information you need for today. So the more you play with me in the chat box, the more you're going to find I will tailor make this to what you need it to be. Let's start with doing a case study. We're going to look at about 5 cases today, and we're going to talk about the differences between assessing and diagnosing. These are the eyes of a 10-year-old boy who had a diagnosis from the doctor of ADHD. And I've worked with a lot, oops, I did not mean to do that. There we go. I've worked with a lot of children who have that diagnosis. And so it's not an uncommon one. What we know, what I have seen in my work with children who have ADD, the ADD or ADHD diagnosis, is that they will typically have a lot of these and a lot of these. Okay. Now, anecdotally, it appears that while most children who have this doctor diagnosis of ADHD have these markers, it doesn't mean that everyone who has these markers will have ADHD. Okay, so we need to know that it's not a two-way street here. These markers together suggest that this person might burn through their B vitamins, vitamin C, calcium, and magnesium very quickly. Those are important things to remember. When you go back to your anatomy and physiology, what you will remember about those nutrients is that the adrenal glands are strongly affected by and also affect the nervous system. those nutrients, B, C, calcium, magnesium, are important for the adrenal glands to do their job properly. And I'm bringing that up because what does a doctor prescribe usually for someone who's got ADD or ADHD? What kind of medications do they prescribe? I want you to let me know in the chat box. Right. When I teach, it's very interactive, and I want you to be interactive with me today so that we can work together on this. What kinds of medications do doctors prescribe for people who have a diagnosis of ADD or ADHD? What do those medications do? Any ideas? Stimulants. Yes, stimulants. Absolutely. Good answer, Sabrina. Good answer. They prescribe stimulants. When you look at Ritalin and things like that, those are stimulants. What are stimulants going to do to how the body burns through B vitamins, vitamin C, calcium, and magnesium? What impact do you think stimulants will have on those nutrients specifically? Burn them faster. Good answer, Morgan. Good answer. Absolutely burn them faster. And so it's going to create that endless loop of problems. And the doctors are absolutely right that when the adrenal glands are low, people don't filter stimuli well. And that's where the attention deficit comes in. They can't focus. They can't filter out the stimuli. They can't say, that's not important. That's not important. That noise is not important. That noise is not important. Stay focused here. And so when we see that, when we see this set of markers in a child's eyes or in a person's eyes, and they've got a diagnosis of attention deficit on any level, we know that what we want to do is not necessarily stimulate, but we do want to build. So this set of markers alone, however, is not enough for us to say, oh, you've got ADHD. And we can't do that anyways. That's a diagnosis, right? We cannot do that anyways. But that set of markers then gives us information to help us ask better questions to understand our client on a deeper level so that we can understand what we need to recommend to help bring this body into a better balance. This is so important. So a common fault, especially if you're new to practicing iridology, is we are too focused on what the doctor's diagnosis is. And that kind of narrows down what we think we can do. Certainly the doctor's diagnosis might add some level of information because, if they do get it right, I'm not saying they get it wrong, but I like to think beyond that. So as a holistic practitioner, we are trained to see things as a whole and to see how they're linked together, right? We are trained to not see symptoms as standalone symptoms. This is where iridology can be very powerful, and depending on the skill level of the practitioner. And so in this case, we start asking questions and asking skilled questions to understand what's going on here. So some of the questions I asked this young boy and his parents, both of his parents came to every appointment. I thought that was very cool. That's very uncommon. I wanted to know things like, what are his sleep patterns? Is his sleep interrupted? I wanted to know, how does he handle stress, frustration, and anxiety? Right, that's going to tell me a lot about his nutritional status as well as about coping skills that he may or may not have learned. I want to know, what is his favorite way to learn things? And when we're talking about someone with ADHD, we're probably looking at someone who's a kinesthetic learner, where they want to have their body involved in this. So with all of this, we need to make sure that this boy in his classroom setting is being taught through his body, not just through his vision, not just through his hearing, but through his body, a kinesthetic learner. So that would be things like even just giving him a little ball of plasticine or clay that he could literally play with very quietly because that's going to help him to focus his learning, keep his body busy, his mind will focus better. right? Don't put him behind a desk and make him sit there with just looking straight forward. That's not going to work. As an adult, don't put him behind a desk. Put him in a gym as a trainer, or outside as a landscaper, or doing surveying. If he's a school teacher, put him in where he's teaching phys ed, or where he's doing things that are very experiential and drama, anything where he's using his body, because he's a couple of reasons. Number one, he's going to resonate more strongly with children who have problems sitting and focusing on one thing, and he'll be a more dynamic teacher for them. But also, it's a good thing for him to be using his body as he is working, as he's earning his keep, so to speak. So there's so many other imbalances that can contribute to ADD and ADHD. And as we understand all the markings in the eye, and we would go into the nutritive zone, and we'd go into the sclera and various things, it's going to help us understand more about what's going on. So again, as we look here, we know that this person burns through B vitamins, vitamin C, calcium, magnesium very quickly. We know that when he's functioning well, he probably, as an adult, he will bite off more than he can chew. He'll overestimate his abilities to get things done, and he will run out of time on projects. He will benefit by having lists of things to do. But what I've learned with adults who are like this is they should not have their list with everything on one piece of paper. They should literally keep a small notepad where each thing they need to do is on a separate page in that notepad. And as they finish that one task, they tear it off and throw it away so that they can now see what is the next task. For people that have these rings in their eyes, to see that long to-do list, it sometimes throws them into anxiety and overwhelm because they realize they can't get it all done. But if they're seeing just one thing at a time, that's easier. They also, one thing that's worked well for many of my clients is to have them get, we call them spikers. I don't know what they're really called. When you go to some stores and you make a purchase and they print out your receipt, and their copy, they stick it on a spiky nail thing so that all of the day's receipts are on that nail. We call that a spiker. I find that my clients, especially my adult clients that have the ADD, ADHD, they do really well with ripping off that one little piece of paper that has the task they were working on, put that on a spiker, and they watch that pile of papers grow. And that's what makes them feel like they're accomplishing something. Does that make sense? It's a very visceral, a very body thing to tear that off and put it on that spiker. Okay, so these people need that kind of treatment, those kinds of, we need to be teaching them those kinds of skills, but we have not labeled them as ADD, ADHD. We have simply, we're using their eyes and using the eyes to guide the questions. We've come to a deeper understanding of who they are and what they need so that we can coach them. Now, dietary work absolutely needs to be happening here as well. And we did a lot of that with this young man and got some really, really nice results. Here is a young woman who came to me in her late 20s with fertility challenges. Now, there are a lot of different reasons for a woman to have fertility challenges. This woman actually had a doctor's diagnosis of polycystic ovarian syndrome. And we're going to look at a few PCOS clients today, and you're going to notice their eyes are all very dramatically different. And that's why we need to understand the markings, how they connect, and what questions they want us to ask, right? Because it's not one set of markings equals one problem. It's one set of markings gives us information, and we have to build with that. So as we look at these eyes, again, so many people will look at a set of eyes and they're looking for specific markers to say that there's a specific problem, and that is not how this works. We know that polycystic ovarian syndrome is a metabolic disorder. Have you heard of polycystic ovarian syndrome, PCOS? If you have, let's just see a little emoji in the chat box. Just raise your hand or do something to let me know that you've heard of PCOS before. Yeah, Lori's heard of it. Thanks, Lori. Appreciate that. Anybody else heard of this? Sabrina, excellent. Well done. If the rest of you have heard of it, just keep dropping the comments in there. PCOS is affecting like 10 to 15% of women nowadays. It's absolutely frightening how much there is. Morgan's heard of this. Excellent. Thank you, Morgan. Appreciate that. So we need to look at the relevant symptoms. We also need to look at the markers and at the overall constitution of this eye instead of focusing on minute details. You're going to see how this fits together. So let's look at how all of this layers up. And Jennifer's heard of PCOS too. Excellent, excellent. So this client was gaining weight, and her menstrual cycles were getting further and further and further apart. Okay, so you probably already know PCOS, the very first definer there is, are the menstrual cycles more than 6 weeks apart? If the woman has fewer than 9 menstrual cycles in a year, we need to consider PCOS. Now, not that we can give it that name, but I will often ask my client, has anyone ever suggested that this could be PCOS? Right, so I'm not saying it. I'm asking if someone else has told her that. That's how we get, one way we get around this. When we look at her eyes, she's got a lot of lacunae in her eyes, and some of them are attached directly to the collarette. And so this is putting her into the category we call polyglandular. That means that she's going to be more prone to, doesn't have to have, but she's more prone to blood sugar imbalances and hormone imbalances. Now, the challenge here is that she had a really awful diet, She's of German extraction, and she was eating the white flour, white sugar, heavy fried foods, just a really bad diet. And it was creating insulin resistance in her, as well as PCOS. And you probably already know that insulin resistance and PCOS go hand in hand. We did a lot of really heavy duty diet work. Her doctor came up with the diagnosis of PCOS. And then her doctor said, go home and look it up online and you'll know what to do. How does that work for you? Yeah, not very well. And so she came to me and she said, this is what the doctor says. How do I work with it? We did some incredibly difficult dietary revamps. This young woman did not have a vegetable in her diet at all. If it wasn't white flour processed, gummy, yucky, packaged food, she wasn't eating it. So we had to get that out of there completely, right? We had to get her doing proteins and vegetables and getting daily physical activity. She has since gone on to have 4 children. And then after 4 children, she was sliding back into really, really bad eating habits again. And the weight was going on. And she struggled and struggled and struggled. And so at the age of about 42, she got pregnant again. This time in the pregnancy, she developed gestational diabetes because her diet was so poor. And, I kept checking in with her and saying, how are you doing? And she kept saying, well, yeah, not good. And so we really, when she got threatened with having to do insulin injections, not just metformin, but full-on insulin injections to regulate her blood sugars, that got her attention. We got her totally straightened around on her diet again, got her doing 20 to 30 minutes of walking after every meal. She went on to have a really, really healthy pregnancy. She kept her blood sugars so completely and totally balanced for the last half of her pregnancy that even her medical doctor said, you're so balanced, you qualify for home birth now, which was absolutely brilliant because that's what she wanted. She'd had 3 of her 4 children at home, and she wanted a home birth with the midwives again. And so knowing that she is polyglandular, knowing that she's gaining weight, knowing that her menstrual cycles are getting further apart, we ask the questions about diet, we ask the questions about physical activity, we ask the questions about what supplements is she consuming, and then we can start crafting the program that she needs to be on to keep things in check. So that's one case of PCOS. Here is another case of PCOS. So this was a client, a petite Asian woman, and I do mean petite. She came to me with a medical diagnosis in hand of PCOS and type 2 diabetes. She did not look type 2 diabetic. She was slender. Now, again, some iridologists may think that everything they need to see and work with is right here because we've got a marking sitting in the ovary of this eye, right? And some might say that's enough to call it PCOS. It is not enough to call it PCOS. That marking alone does not give us enough information. It simply says ovary wants to have an issue. Not ovary does have an issue, but ovary wants to have an issue. Some iridologists, and you might have heard this in other circles, say that these lines, these black lines radiating outwards, means this person has parasites. Have you heard that? If you've heard that, give me parasites in the chat box. That is, and if you've heard that, there's no shame on you, it just means you've heard it, right? So let's go ahead and throw that in there if you've heard that these black lines mean you've got parasites. Because what we now know is that these do not have anything to do with parasites, right? This does not mean she's got a parasite in her ovary. It doesn't mean we need to cleanse her and that in cleansing her, that black line is going to go away. That does not happen. It's just what we used to believe years ago. I believed that 40 years ago when I started, before I became a constitutional iridologist. What this simply means, again, is there is some kind of a nerve feed interruption to the ovary. And if this woman is not well nourished, that interruption is going to have an impact. If this woman is well nourished and if that ovary is well supported, that line may have no impact at all. Notice we also have contraction first. Does this look somewhat like that little boy's eye that we first looked at, where he had ADD, ADHD? Do you see how different the assessment is when we're not looking just at markings, but when we've got background on the client, right? So important. So when I look at this, I do want to know, how does she handle stress? I also want to know what is her diet, what is her lifestyle, because we know that a lack of B vitamins support the liver. Liver and pancreas work together to keep the blood sugars balanced. We know that a lack of B vitamins and or elevated stress can then throw the liver and the pancreas out of balance and can lead to carbohydrate cravings. Okay, the little boy we worked with before didn't have carbohydrate cravings. This woman does. She was really into carbs. Her breakfast was a sweet roll with juice. Lunch was white rice, sugary Asian sauces, and a can of pop. Right. Supper was more white rice, more sugary sauces, and there was just not much nutrition there. So again, the B vitamins are critical for liver function. Liver function plays key roles in hormone balance, right? Liver makes cholesterol that gets turned into hormones. The hormones go through the body, then the liver has to do the phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 detox to get rid of the metabolites. Liver plays an important role. Is this making sense? And so right from the get-go, we made sure that she was on a prenatal vitamin that had methylated Bs, because there were some indications here that she might also not methylate well, that she might have MTHFR. Her menstrual cycles when we started out were like 90 days apart. They were very, very long. That's like 4 cycles a year. That's infertility right there. And it took us about 6 months to get her cycles down to 35 days. Now she's talking fertility. In spite of everything that we did, her doctor kept saying, well, you've got type 2 diabetes, you've got PCOS, you will develop gestational diabetes. Of course, they didn't give her any information about how to mitigate that with diet. We worked really, really hard on diet. That in our first appointment, as we were talking about diet, she I could see she was getting very overwhelmed because she and her husband had been trying for 3 years already. They wanted a baby, but their diet was so bad. And it was so sweet to watch her husband. He reached over, he took her by the hand, and he said to her, "Sweetheart, don't worry. I will take over all the cooking. You just eat what I make for you. And I'm going to eat the same food you do. So it's not going to be that you're eating different. We'll both eat the same, but I will do the cooking because I can. I'll do that for you. I'll do that for us. I'll do that so we can have a baby." And he did. Yeah, Corinne says, what a great supportive husband. No kidding. He was amazing. I kind of winked at her and I said, he's a keeper, right? Any guy who's willing to do that for you, he's a keeper. And so he did that. He did that. And that's what got the really fast action. That was the foundation of getting those cycles down to 35 days. And then we worked together for a long time. It was about 1.5 years in total before she conceived. She did not develop gestational diabetes. She stayed on her diet. She stayed on the supplements. She went from being totally sedentary to walking for 30 to 60 minutes every day to keep her blood sugars balanced. She delivered a healthy 7-pound baby boy at term. And she had like a 4-hour labor and delivery. And the doctors were absolutely stunned that she did such that she was so healthy, that she did so well. Okay. So again, iridology is not about naming diseases. It's not about ascribing one iridology marker to one problem. It's about understanding, how do the markers work together? What does your client want help with? What questions does the client's problems and the markers tell you need to be asking, so that you can create the program in the right way? Is that making sense? If it does, give me a makes sense in the comments box so that I know that it's fitting. I know the way I do iridology and the way I teach iridology is quite different from the way most other iridology teachers do it, and the way most iridologists do it too. So, quick introduction of myself. Some of you are pretty new to me. So my name is Judith Cobb. I am a master herbalist, natural nutrition clinical practitioner, and a level 3 certified iridologist. IPA has us update our credentials every 2 years, and I've been an iridologist for way more than this. They just started issuing badges, so that's kind of cool, a few years ago. There are only 8 level 3 instructors in the world right now. That's the highest standard that IPA has, and I am one of those 8. I've studied iridology under 8 different teachers, 3 different styles. I've been working as a holistic practitioner since 1981. I started studying in 79, started doing clinical work in 1981. So I've been here for a while. I've seen a lot of changes in iridology. I've seen some real neat developments there. A lot of changes in what we understand about the body and what we know about nutrition and what we know about supplementation. And I don't think we're anywhere near the end on any of those. We are going to continue to see a lot more development and changes in research. I've designed and taught many, many courses over the years. And a few of them that I'm teaching now, of course, dynamic iridology. I do a women's holistic health course. I do a body systems iridology and herbology course, and of course, an IPA level 3 course as well. My dynamic iridology course is the equivalent of IPA level 1 and 2 together, with the exception that I include a lot more of the clinical aspects. I'm not just teaching markers, I'm teaching clinical aspects in that course. So my credentials for nutrition and as a herbalist, these are the professional organizations that I am a member of. What I love about these organizations and IPA is that we have to submit CEUs every year. We have to stay up to date. We have to keep studying. It's not enough that I've learned this stuff decades ago, but we have to keep studying. I probably spend at least an hour or 2 every day studying just to keep up on what's out there, right? There's so much, so much. All right, let's look at a few more cases here. This is a young woman. She was in her early 20s, and she came to me concerned that she was gaining weight. She was in university. She had come home for Christmas, And she was concerned that in her first term away, she'd gained about 20 pounds. Now, anyone see a problem with that? I sure do. You know, they call it the freshman 15 or whatever, right? She was in school, in university in another country. She didn't have a car. She was eating in the campus meal plan. So as she's talking to me about gaining weight and I'm looking at her eyes, I'm looking to see what in here would cause her to gain weight. Now, a few more questions here as we were going. I wanted to know what her diet was. Well, you're eating on the campus meal plan, you're eating pure carb, right? That's all there is to it. I asked her about her lifestyle. Pretty much no physical activity, walking around on campus because she was living on campus, and that was it. Nothing else. And so we knew that we needed to do some diet work. We needed to get her being more physically active, but we needed to ask more than that because I noticed a couple of things. This predominantly right here. So as we're looking at her eye, this is right here. This is where this fiber that is coming around the eye, each of us has one of these. It's supposed to be flush to the surface of the eye. Right here, it's lifted right off the surface. And we know that because this is the shadow that is being cast by the light that we've got here. So this is lifted right off the surface. This is called a gateway arch. Now, the gateway arch suggests a personal and family history of blood sugar issues. So that instantly makes me think, okay, high carb diet, gaining weight. My next question had to be, tell me about your menstrual cycles. Right? I do a lot of work with fertility. And she said, oh, they're regular. And I said, are they 4 weeks apart? And she said, or roughly 4 weeks. And she said, they're usually 4 weeks late. So then I asked it a different way. Are you saying that your cycles are typically 8 weeks apart? Yeah, typically 8 weeks. Well, there we have it. That with the weight gain, again, says PCOS. This teaches us why. Genetically, she's got that predisposition towards blood sugar imbalances. She's got the right diet happening. She's got sedentary lifestyle. The doctor, she had just been to the doctor to talk about weight. The doctor said nothing about this to her. And so I couldn't say you have PCOS. But what I can do is say, you know, when I see a young woman whose menstrual cycles are getting further apart and who's gaining weight, and there's a family history of blood sugar issues, it makes me wonder if we might be working with polycystic ovarian syndrome. Now, I can't say you've got that, but I just wonder if. And so because we know blood sugars are involved, that's how I want to work with you to see if we can get things working out better for you. All right. So we did start working on her diet. She had a kitchen in her apartment. She just wasn't using it. The nearest grocery store was 2 miles away. She was going to university in Hawaii. So it's not like she's ever going to have bad weather, right? I asked her, could you twice a week make the walk to the grocery store to get some protein? And we talked about protein, what that looks like, to get vegetables, to get some eggs. Could you then bring that back to your apartment and prepare your own meals? And she said, yes, I could. Great. So we have now slayed 2 birds with 1 stone. Sorry for any of you who love birds. That's not meant to offend any bird lovers out there, right? We've taken care of getting her some activity at least twice a week, which we built on, and getting her better food, right? And then we said, okay, you're going to walk there twice a week. We also need you to be walking for 20 to 30 minutes after each meal. You're going to start walking a lot, just walking after every meal, because that helps to reduce the insulin resistance, right? And so as we did that, she had started to lose weight literally within just a month or so after her first appointment. So again, we looked at 3 sets of polycystic ovarian syndrome, and their eyes were different. They had different features in every one of them. It's about understanding the markings, how to connect them to guide the questions. There's no master list of questions. When you know how to assess the symptoms and the iris markers, you can develop the skill of what questions to ask. Okay, and that just takes experience. It also takes some training. That's one of the things that we really practice in the dynamic iridology course, is we look at what questions does this eye want you to ask. You've got these symptoms, you've got these markers, the client wants this goal. What are the questions? All of that teaches you to ask. So, so important. Another fertility case. I do a lot of work with fertility. This was not polycystic ovarian syndrome. Could have been, but this client was doing so much that was right. So much that was right. Her diet was really clean. She was fairly physically active. Most of her diet was organic. She and her husband had been trying for a year to get pregnant. Now, you know, when I'm looking at this and I see that we've got a reflexive here, we've got a lacuna here. I mean, this is ovary area. This is ovary area right here. We've got some lacunae attached to the collarette, which says she could be prone to blood sugar imbalances. We've got things in here that are saying there could be some issues. Again, I wanted to zoom in on the right things. And the one thing that I zoomed in on was this little tiny speck of color right here. Okay. And so, yes, she's prone to those hormone imbalances, and that could tip her towards PCOS. But this is what tipped me off, that one little marking right there. Her menstrual flow, as she described it, was barely a smear on toilet paper. And that alone suggests there could be some PCOS. There's got to be something weird going on if she does not build a thick enough endometrial lining. That will also prevent her from implanting a fertilized egg, right? You got to have a good endometrial lining for that fertilized egg to burrow in. And so as I saw her and I saw this, I knew instantly that we needed methylated Bs for her. Giving her an unmethylated B was going to keep her hormones unbalanced and create all kinds of issues for her. So we gave her the methylated Bs. We also had to increase her fat and protein intake. She was really good on her vegetables, but she was not good on getting enough fats, and she was not good on getting enough amino acids. So we had to really get her to work hard. She prefers a more vegan lifestyle. So we had to get very creative about how are we going to get the proteins in. You know, we don't want her just taking animal proteins out and not replacing those amino acids with something. We had to get very creative there. And so we did that. It took her about 6 months, and then she did conceive, which was very exciting. Now, partway through her pregnancy, she did the 23andMe. She was a bit of a nervous Nelly, a little bit anxious. She'd worked so hard to get pregnant, and she just so wanted this baby that anytime there was a hiccup that was out of place, I would get a panicky email. So she sent me this panicky email about getting her 23andMe results back, saying that she had the MTHFR defect and wondering, had she damaged her baby? Would her baby be okay? Oh my goodness, I've got this defect. And I was able to say, I suspected that from what I saw in your eyes. And therefore, that prenatal vitamin we've got you on that has the methylated Bs, that is all about making up for that defect and helping you to not be affected by it. So she was pretty happy with that. Again, we can't name PCOS from looking at the eyes. We need more information, and then we're not going to name it anyways. We're just going to assess. We're going to look at this list of symptoms and everything our client is doing or is not doing for their health. And we are going to craft a program. That is how we work on every situation, whether our client is coming in with heart disease or a heart attack or allergies or digestive problems or elimination problems or skin symptoms. We're always looking at the eye as a whole. What does the eye tell us about our client's predispositions? What questions then does this all inspire us to ask? And then what recommendations do we craft from there? How does that feel? How does that feel? Especially for those of you who are working in clinical situations, how's it feeling for you? I'd love to see in the chat box if that feels like it's a way to work very smoothly and very, very effectively with your clients and in very precise ways. Does that sound like it would work for you in what you do? So where does that leave us? Where does that leave us? If you're serious about learning iridology, about getting better at using iridology as an assessment tool, at getting more precise in how you create your client protocols, if you want to see your clients get better results, then we want to maybe look at how we can help that happen. Because, you know, so many times with iridology, the teachers teach markings, but they don't teach practical application. And that to me doesn't work very well at all. So iridology is an assessment tool. It points the way to ask the questions that we need to ask. We're not going to name diseases. We are going to assess. And then because we have the anatomy and physiology under our belt, which is why I insist on that before people enroll in my program, we can dig deeper and understand what we need to be doing here. So if you've already got anatomy and physiology under your belt, if you want to learn how the markers work together, how they play off each other, if you want to learn how to figure out what questions to ask, if you want to learn how to create programs your clients can be more successful in implementing, if you want to be mentored for the long term, and I do mean years there, not just when you're enrolled in the program. How many courses have you taken where while the program was active, you had mentoring, you had access to teachers to ask questions of, but when the course was over, the door slams shut, now you're on your own? Yeah, I don't do that. That door stays open for support. If this is you, then we maybe should talk about the dynamic iridology assessment system, because it is the only live, online, fully mentored course for nutritionists, herbalists, naturopaths, RNs, massage therapists, nurse practitioners, physical therapists, anyone who's got that A&P under their belt, for any of those professionals who want to streamline their clinical work without sacrificing client care. Because you want to be able to create your client programs when you're with your client, not on your own unpaid time, right? You don't want to be donating time to the process. Get your programs done while you're with your clients. If you can get them done while you're with your clients, you will stop overwhelming your clients. Your clients will be able to stick to your programs better, which means they will have better success, and they will want to keep coming back to you to get coaching for what is the next step? What is the next step? What is the next step? I've actually got clients who have been with me for over 40 years. I've got lots that have been with me for 20, but I've got quite a handful that have been with me since the very beginning, even through my Jensen days when I probably wasn't very good. The goal of dynamic iridology is to teach you constitutional iridology and how to use it confidently so that you can easily integrate what you already know about nutrition and herbology or aromatherapy or whatever your modality is to confidently create doable client programs in your paid client sessions. Our next course is starting on June 27th. It will be 5 o'clock till 7:30 p.m. every, I believe that's a Thursday, every Thursday for 20 weeks. Yes, that's a Thursday. Registration is open. The only way you can enroll in the course is by having a little conversation with me. And that is what that URL is there for, the tinyurl.com/dynamic iridology. This is an opportunity for you to schedule a time to chat with me so we can talk about the course, find out what your goals are, find out what you want to do with this to make sure that the course is a good fit for you. I've learned long ago that if it's not a good fit, students drop out. And that's not what any of us want. I want students who want to, where it's the right place, right? I want to mentor you. I want to help you. I want to guide you, not just in learning iridology, but I want to be a support person for you as you implement iridology into your business, into your practice, right? Elaine Hedden is a physical therapist in Alaska. She says, I'm a holistic physical therapist and have wanted to study iridology for years, but just couldn't find the right instructor or school. Judith Cobb's iridology course has been the perfect fit The caliber and organization of the coursework is professional. Her depth and breadth of knowledge of iridology, herbals, nutrition, and pathology is beyond most instructors and even some university professors. If you are a health professional wanting to expand your scope of practice by learning about the most up-to-date information on iridology, take the 20-week level 1 and 2 class from Judith Cobb, worth every minute and every penny. And so that, again, level 1 and level 2 is dynamic iridology. Stephanie Morgan has a master's degree in education. She said this: if you're thinking about this, don't put it off. I regret not signing up as soon as I learned about Judith. I was waiting for life to settle down. Hint, there's never going to be a better time. Life is going to happen whether you're in class or not. I'm so thankful for Judith's approach. Every week I see clients leave the holistic office where I work in a dazed, overwhelmed stupor. Far too many of them do not return. She was in a clinic, working in a clinic where they were teaching they were using old style iridology, where you vomit out everything you see in the eye, everything the client needs to do, and it's so overwhelming. Stephanie then went on to say, I just have to praise my teacher for a minute. Those of you who know Judith from videos already recognize she's an amazing instructor. What you may not realize is that students and graduates have access to Judith and training videos and alumni after the class is finished. She is a rare find and under promise and over deliver. I'm so thankful I was led to her website. So again, the course includes 20 2.25 to 2.5 hour live webinar classes that are recorded for playback on demand, live group mentoring twice each month, student and alumni MeWe group where you can post questions, post cases, get feedback. The 225-page digital textbook is included, and 45 pages of digital study notes. Right, so this is all to help you with your learning. Now, the other thing to remember is that I only accept a maximum of 10 students per group because I believe students learn better in smaller groups. IPA certification mentoring. In order to certify with IPA, you need to have a mentor. They require it. And that includes some one-on-one time with me to make sure that you are ready for the certification exam. I provide you with case studies that are required, again, as a part of the certification process that IPA has. So I provide those for you so that it's easier for me to mark, but that way I can do a much better job of coaching you as well. So with that, throwing it out there again, now that you've seen a little bit about how we can use the eyes to assess a health problem and understand the pathways that that problem is taking in this body, and then understand how do we create a protocol from there. Now that you've seen that, you can see what value assessing rather than diagnosing is in clinical practice. Depending on what your forte is and what your skill set is, if you are not allowed to diagnose, iridology will help you stay within your scope of practice by helping you to not diagnose, right? And that's an important thing. So if that sounds interesting, I invite you to use that URL that I put in the chat box to schedule a time to talk with me about the course, about your goals, about what you would like to accomplish with this. And if it sounds like dynamic iridology is a good fit for you, I will invite you to enroll. If we feel like it's not a good fit for whatever reason, maybe you need the anatomy and physiology portion, or maybe there's something else that should happen first or something that should happen instead, I will use my 43 years of business and clinical experience to coach you in a direction that is more appropriate for you. All righty. So with that, my friends, are there any lingering questions? Anything that I can answer for you before we wrap up for today? If you're typing a question, use the raise hand icon so I know to wait for you. All righty. With that, my friends, we are done for today. Thank you so much for being with me. To remember, if you're watching this on the replay, to like, share, drop a comment, subscribe to my channel. And I hope to be speaking with you very soon in one of those little one-on-one chats to talk about iridology and your business and your practice. Have a great day. We'll talk to you later. Bye for now.